This is Richard Curtis.
A real populist proposal for relations with China. There's been a bit of a fuss lately about the nature of U.S.-China relations. The business community, aka the capitalist class, has been divided about the issue. Some want to do business with China, which is, after all, the largest market in the world, as a way of undermining Chinese socialism. Some want to isolate China, supposedly because of human rights abuses, as a way of undermining Chinese socialism. Some working people, even many of those who call themselves progressive or populist, have also called for us to boycott Chinese products. Ronnie Duggar, of the Alliance for Democracy, has written, "We ought not, quote, trade with dictatorships like China that use slave labor and shoot down, jail, and torture their dissenters," unquote. While I think we can all agree that economic policies must have a moral component, this is what separates progressives from reactionaries, ethical judgments must be made in their global and historical context and not just as a reaction to a few isolated incidents. Duggar's veiled suggestion that the U.S. blockade of Cuba is somehow in the interest of working Americans, or is in some abstract way just, is flat out wrong, because he fails to take into account the global context of the people's historic struggle against imperialism. The ethical dimension of any international policy must factor in the goals of the societies with which we trade and not just the reactionary proclamations of the enemy corporate class. In the real world, we all have a moral obligation to support countries whose general aim at least appears to be improving the lives of their people. Taken in this light, we must encourage trade with Cuba and China as a means of promoting the interests of working people everywhere. I find it ironic that a so-called populist like Duggar would single out socialist states like China and Cuba for condemnation. Socialism is not an enemy to working people, and supporting socialist states is most definitely in the interest of working people. I submit that if the Alliance and other populists are intending to have a positive effect on the lives of working people in this country, that part of the strategy for accomplishing this goal must include supporting governments which are dedicated to the same goal in their own countries, even if we happen to disagree with particular aspects of their approach to particular issues. For example, to the degree that the Chinese actually make use of slave or prison labor, then those particular industries ought to be boycotted by American consumers. To propagate a blanket boycott based on a few problematic areas serves only the interests of the enemy, who clearly recognizes that socialism in China and Cuba is a threat to capitalist interests. Even if Duggar and his ilk do not share the Chinese and Cuban people's goal of socialism, they ought to at least respect those nations' right to self-determination, not to mention recognizing the general political strategy that my enemies' enemies are my allies. I believe that the heart of this issue is that many well-intentioned people in this country fail to understand that the struggle to improve the lives of ordinary people takes place in history. The current and increasing awareness of most people that global corporations are dictating our lives is not an accident. Rather, this awareness is the result of a post-Cold War global onslaught against us by these corporations, or, more precisely, by the owning class which controls the corporations. All of us in the world share this common enemy. Fighting amongst ourselves over what are, in the end, minor details is counterproductive and gives aid and comfort only to the enemy. Some may feel that by taking what they believe to be a moral high ground with regards to internal problems in Cuba or China insulates them from the complexities of life. Not only is this not true, but hostility towards the socialist world is morally unconscionable because such a position fails to appreciate the interconnections we all share and the common struggle for justice, the class struggle, which affects all people of the earth. It is time for real populists to stand up and take on the challenge of living in solidarity and struggle in a morally complicated and at times ambiguous world. If we set our eyes on the ultimate goal we share, the goal of universal justice, and resolve to work together to achieve this goal, then we will one day succeed. Divided, we remain forever defeated. United, we will triumph. This is Richard Curtis.
Humans smarter than we are?